Where I want to begin is your interest in wrestling and the Von Erichs. Obviously, for many people of the era the film takes place in, the Von Erichs were a household name, huge in wrestling. But when did you become involved in the Von Erichs and wrestling and all that good stuff?
So I got into wrestling in the late 80s. I'd say, I don't know, maybe 87, 88. So sort of missed the heyday of World Class Championship Wrestling. But I was a big wrestling fan, WWF, WCW, and then started to collect old tapes. So I'd get old NWA matches, and I'd back order Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So I got really into it, and that's where I discovered the guys. I must have had some tapes of the old Freebirds Von Erich matches at the Sportatorium, and just fell in love with their style. And then I got to see Kerry live a few times as a kid. I saw him, I think, 3 times as the Texas Tornado in the WWF. So, and then was really affected when I read about his death. And they really stayed with me as a family. So, and then as a filmmaker, I just started to look at ideas, and had this idea to go back to them and revisit the world of wrestling and their story and their curse and those things. So, yeah, it's been with me most of my life.
Yeah, and you can tell from the love that you bring to the Von Erich family and the way that you approach both the highs and lows of their story. And it really reaches some pretty catastrophic lows. And I wanted to ask, in having to depict suicide, it is incredibly personal. It's incredibly heartbreaking for so many people. It touches so many lives. And I felt that you carried it with a lot of care and a lot of personal interest into why a person might go to that length. How did you want to approach it to get to that respectful place where you're telling the truth? It happened. These is real events, but doing it in a way that is not exploitative.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything in the film with the suicide and everything else, I just want it to be human. I want it to be respectful and loving of the individual, and also no judgment. Like, even, I just try not to judge any of my characters, even Fritz at his worst moments. I just try not to judge, and just think about the character and think about the person. So really important for me that we're thinking about those boys and being sensitive to them, and using both the facts, but also showing the right amount too. Showing a lot happens off screen, and making those decisions about what moments to show, and making sure they're telling the story in the right way.
Now, one of the important things that a lot of wrestling fans noticed was you did have to kind of leave out one of the Von Erich brothers and merge, the stories a little bit. Now, obviously, that's a creative choice that many people who are making a biographical picture have to make. You cannot necessarily hit every single part of the story. But was there any reaction from people who said, "Hey, we're missing a Von Erich"?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's impossible to tell this family story, and there was a lot more, even beyond Chris, that was left out. And it was leaving out Chris was the toughest choice I've ever made as a writer. But it's the difference between the movie working or not working, and there was definitely some pushback from some people. But once you sort of talk about it, I think everyone kind of realizes, yeah, it makes sense. And obviously the person I was most concerned about was telling Kevin.
Yeah.
And I told Kevin before he saw the movie, and he didn't even think twice about it. He was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't want the movie to be all about grief." And it was such a relief, because he was obviously the person I cared most about.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. That's fantastic to hear. And obviously there was a lot of cooperation between you and Kevin, and making sure that this told the story in a fantastic way. And part of what I thought your directing really did was capture the spirit of the ring, which so many have tried before, but I know it can be a challenge to really encapsulate how much fun and energy, but also pain and hard-hitting, bone-crunching hits are happening during this spectacle of entertainment. When you wanted to bring the Von Erichs to life on the screen, how did you look at making the ring very real for people watching?
Yeah, just both the details of the space. We wanted to get that sportatorium right. We just spent a lot of time. We built that from scratch in an old warehouse, in an old furniture warehouse. So we had to find the right place, and then work on the textures and get the lighting right, and just had to have that feel. And then we wanted the wrestling to just be the highest level it could be. And so we had Chavo Guerrero as our trainer, and he worked with the actors, and turned out the actors were really good. And so we were able then to push them further. We were able to get them wrestling full matches, and when we'd shoot, we would wrestle almost entire matches, and it allowed us to be in the emotion of it. It allowed us to do the characters. So we didn't have to think about the wrestling because it was just happening. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it made for some really, really thrilling days and thrilling scenes.
I think one of the most impressive things we also get is a truly affecting and beautiful performance out of Zac Efron. I think there are some out there that did not know Zac Efron could give such a deep performance, and a painful one, and one that I think really deserved a little bit more recognition awards-wise. What was the working relationship between you and Zac? How did you guys find the depths of this soul?
I mean, it was great. He just came in full commitment, to transforming and just being there, embodying the wrestling life. And I agree. I think it's incredible. And then a lot of it was just holding back his emotion. It was almost so much about getting in touch with your feelings. And he, as a character, he wasn't in touch. And that's his journey, is to get in touch with those feelings and to figure that out. So in a way, the approach was just to, focus on the physical and not the feelings until he finally does get in touch with himself, and so it was an incredible journey. And I knew from talking to Zac that he had it in him. I just knew, he's this well of emotion, and he's just a really kind guy. And I just knew it would be a really interesting combination of things outside of him.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there any sort of activities that you did with the rest of the guys? Because the brotherhood really comes through in the movie. These guys really feel connected. Every performance feels like these guys are believable as brothers. Was there anything that you wanted to do specifically to get all the guys as the Von Erichs feeling really close together?
We did a wrestling boot camp. That was really something, where we spent a couple of weeks just going through all the matches and learning the moves and learning how to wrestle. And then the other thing was that the first 2 weeks of the shoot were all at the ranch. And so they all spent, and it was pretty remote. And so we spent a couple of weeks all together just being a family before we did any wrestling. And I think that time really solidified. And also, shooting in a city like Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where we shot, was just great because sometimes if you shoot in a larger city, people can be distracted, or if it's a place where some of the actors live, they go about their lives. Being there was so great because everyone was just there for the movie, and so spent a lot of time together offset as well.
Yeah, I'm sure hanging out in Baton Rouge was a pretty great experience for everyone involved, and building the camaraderie is so important when you're doing an ensemble like this, Sean, and it really just comes in through. There were so many moments where I laughed, I cried. I mean, Sean, I was bawling at the end, absolutely sobbing, not only because of the sadness of so much of it, but the beauty that you bring in through, and the way that these guys get through the grief. And it just inspired me. I'm like, God, I need more Von Erich in my life. And I want to watch this again and again. I think despite the fact that it talks about some really grim and tough subject matter, it is ultimately a very hopeful picture, and one that I think more people need to see. I want to ask one last thing here. Possibly the greatest needle drop of the year. Tom Sawyer during the workout sequence, the big montage. Obviously, this is the walkout music for the Von Erichs, and you got it in there. And I felt like I could run through a wall after that happened. Was there any sort of, any problems getting the rights to Tom Sawyer, or was it just, hey, we need to have Tom Sawyer, make it happen?
Yeah, no, it was very much that. It was the first, when you start to put the movie together, you got a list of songs that you want to include, and you have to prioritize, right? Because you can't afford them all.
Sure.
Some of them are going to have tricky availability, all those things. But I was just like, if there's only one song, it's Tom Sawyer, and that's it, And so we went out and got it, and it wasn't super complicated, and it was just always going to be at the core of the movie, and that energy that song has for those brothers, and combining that with this sort of sports montage while also telling the story of the family at that point. It was just really, really crucial from very early on in wanting to make this movie. I knew that was going to be the centerpiece.
Yeah, and it fits perfectly, and the whole thing is great. Again, recommend to anybody who loves film, but also if you like wrestling, this will be great for you. I know it's available now, so get out there, get it on whatever format you can. Personally, I'm a Blu-ray man, but any way to watch The Iron Claw is a great way to watch The Iron Claw. Sean, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate you hopping on with us here in Chicago.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.